things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucks. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. As always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby.
What is going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday and welcome to the Recher podcast here in Tampa, Florida. Hope everybody is having a wonderful start to their week. Follow me on all social media platforms on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere, and hopefully you are too. Like and subscribe. Every subscription helps. Trying to get over 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. We're getting closer and closer. Hopefully you can help me achieve that goal. Follow me again on Twitter, Instagram. Those are the big ones as well, trying to get those followers up, because what I do is I take what we do here on the Recher podcast. I cut up some of those videos and then share them on social media, including some of the things that we did yesterday, including our chatter about the NFL playoffs, and also Nikita Kucherov, what it's like to cover the Lightning's enigmatic superstar. More Bolts talk later on the program today. I'll tell you why they came up short against the Maple Leafs up in Toronto. Also, why Andrei Vasilevsky did not start last night, while he'll be between the pipes tonight against the Canadiens up there in Montreal. The one and only Gabby Shirley joins us at 1 o'clock today. At 1:30, Denard Span, our good pal, former MLB player, is going to join us to talk about Juan Soto, the Dodgers spending the money. They're getting Kirby Yates, reliever as well, former Ray. They just don't stop, and all things MLB. So he'll join us right there. Shout out to my guy Dolan. I'm not usually correct on predictions, but I predicted Ohio State would win it all. Dolan, you are spot on with that. We're going to break that down here momentarily. But I wanted to start the show today to kind of let you know, and I know it may have come out already on social media, but we were supposed to have our guy Chris Russell joining us from up there in DC. And Chris is such a fantastic guy and just a friend of the program. And I was so excited to talk to Chris today about Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. And we know Chris daily 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern, team 980 there in the nation's capital. But he texted me a little while ago to let us know that he wasn't able to join us on the program today because his former partner had passed on, and that is the one and only Pete Medhurst. And if you remember that name, and I don't want to leave out any of his accomplishments because it's just an incredible resume that Pete had, and followed him for many, many years because we met him, and he was actually on the air on WDA. He was a dad, a coach, and umpire, referee, Rosecraft Raceway, Nats Radio Network, Ravens Radio Network, WBAL Radio. He did lacrosse. He did a little bit of everything, but a lot of times you've heard the name in the last couple of years from Pete Medhurst is because he was the play-by-play guy for Navy. And we had him on, I want to say 2-3 years ago, up there when we were doing the Army-Navy game. And he was just such a nice guy and so dedicated to that area and dedicated to the Naval Academy and their sports. And he was just such a wealth of knowledge to be able to listen to Pete Medhurst speak. And just to hear that news is absolutely heartbreaking today. He lost his battle with melanoma. And again, former radio partner of our guy, Chris Russell, who was supposed to join us at 12:30 today, and understandably is focused on that. And that's part of the gig, part of the business. I remember when we lost the big dog, Steve Dumig. Ian and I were on air together. Ron was off that day, and everything just changes. You could have your entire show planned out, and that happened like 10 minutes before we went on air, and you just kind of rip up that piece of paper, and you know what your show is going to be about that day. And it's kind of ironic that Pete Medhurst passed away, because I got a message earlier today from Yurik Malagi, and Yurik, and I looked up his profile. He was a guy that hit me up on Instagram. Yurik is an assistant coach at Kansas State basketball team. And what he messaged me about was the late great Amir Abdur-Rahim. They coached together back in 2016 at Texas A&M, and you see the picture right there. There's always going to be something Amir Abdur-Rahim related on my background here for the Jay Recher podcast. And it's so surreal because you just never know when your number is called. I've been thinking a lot lately about time and age. And, I was thinking about how time waits for no one, right? Two most undefeated people in the world are Mother Nature and Father Time. And it's so like life is so fragile. It's so like it's here one day and it's gone the next. And that's why, this whole thing of like me losing my job back in November, like it didn't affect me maybe as much as it should have, maybe as much as it affected some other people, because at the end of the day, it was their job. It was a job, right? It wasn't like, just think about how the Medhurst family is feeling today. Think about how the Abdur-Rahim family has been doing the last couple of months. Like that to me is a real loss. And even if it's just kind of like getting older, like you see things change, you see times change, and you see athletes that you saw come up. You saw them as rookies, you saw them as young players, and you see how they try to battle the test of time. And you see the LeBrons of the world. We saw Tom Brady. And I woke up this morning seeing Novak Djokovic against Carlos Alcaraz, where it's looking like the last couple of times they've played, it's like, all right, Novak is on. Obviously, he's got his better years are behind him rather than in front of him. And then you see this morning, and he wins their quarterfinal matchup in 4 sets. And really cool to see Novak coached by Andy Murray, one of his longtime competitors. But he's kind of like fighting that test, right? Fighting back Father Time and trying to prove that he can still, compete at a high level, which he's a machine. It's insane. But my love and my thoughts and my everything goes out to the Medhurst family today, the Abdur-Rahim family today, and just everybody that's dealing with loss, because I know that there's a lot of things in this world that people have to deal with. And, we think it's like, oh, it's, some things are bigger deals than other, but I think at the end of the day, your health is the most important thing. And being there for your family, your health and your family, as much as we love sports and we put so much into it, we got to keep things in perspective every once in a while as well. All right. Let's see. David Terry says, Jay Bird, you're right. Not a smart bet on Notre Dame. You got that right, buddy. And Dolan, thank you. You're always going to go on and do bigger and better things. iHeart was just a stepping stone. Hey, again, still no ill will to everybody over there. I got a lot of love for everybody that's working there at DAE and iHeart. So you never know. You never know what the future holds. But I'm excited about the journey. I'm excited about the future and what at least imminently, with the next couple of weeks and couple months hold for me. All right, let's get into the national championship discussion from last night. Listen, for a little while there, I was like, damn, this is the blowout that I was scared we were going to see. But listen, you got to tip your hat to Notre Dame. They battled. They battled their ass off, and Marcus Freeman and those guys, they just kept punching. They kept swinging all the way to the end. But the congratulations today goes out to Ryan Day. That was a legacy-defining win for him last night. He's now 70-10 at Ohio State. It's pretty wild to think that some people wanted him out because he hasn't beaten Michigan in 4 tries and he hasn't won a national championship. Well, that has changed. Like, his life and his career has changed forever. His team got punched in the mouth, and then they steamrolled their way to a big lead that Riley Leonard and Notre Dame, they just couldn't answer for. And it just seemed like Riley and Notre Dame, whatever they did on that first drive, it was like all they had. They put all of their juice, they put all of their energy and enthusiasm into that one drive. And it took them a little while to kind of get their steam back. And you wonder, right? Like, you wonder if they just thought, okay, now we're going to dominate the game. In Ohio State, they kept the foot on the gas pedal. And you look at what Will Howard was able to do. He was fantastic. 17 for 21, 231 yards on the night, 2 touchdowns, and he ran effectively too. 16 carries for 57 yards. I think people thought that Riley Leonard would be a factor in the running game, but you look at Will Howard, I thought when he ran, it was at like the perfect time. Just pick up a couple here, pick up a couple there. Didn't expect him to go for 100. Didn't expect him to break any long Saquon Barkley runs. right? But I thought he was effective and he was very, very smart in that game last night. I'll say this once and I'll say it again. I don't care what level of football it is. It comes down to accuracy and decision making. And you look at that third down throw from Will Howard to Jeremiah Smith at the end of the game. I mean, that was just the absolute dagger. Notre Dame trying to mount a comeback, but that dime that Will Howard threw and the separation that Smith had, we knew he was going to have to be a big part of that game. We knew it, especially after only having one catch for 3 yards in the semifinal game against Texas. They weren't going to be able to keep him quiet for very long. And it was all really on Chip Kelly. Like, all right, what are you going to do to get Jeremiah Smith involved early and often? And you know you have Carnell Tate. You know you have Emeka Ibuka as well. Those guys combined for 8 catches for 99 yards. But it was Jeremiah Smith, 5 catches for 88. The 1 touchdown, and Notre Dame, poor guy. I mean, you look at Christian Gray, the defender, and he's yelling like, he's right here. He's right here. Somebody come after him. I got to go this way. And then boom, just a fake like he was going into the motion back the other way. We saw that from Kadarius Toney a couple of years ago for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That type of play is just so difficult to guard. But you got to tip your hat to Jeremiah Smith. Big players make big plays in the biggest moments, and that's exactly what that kid did. It was a fun game to watch. I think in the beginning and the end, it was weird in the middle, right? Because Ohio State looked like they were going to dominate. I mean, you just look at the scorecard and you go, wow, it was 21-7 at the half, and they scored 31 straight, and you're like, oh man, one of these national championship games, right? And no, I mean, Notre Dame made a little bit of a run at the end, and it was, I liked the finish to that game. I mean, Jaden Greathouse had a monster game, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I feel like we missed a little bit something. We missed a little bit of something when it came to Jeremiah Love only getting 4 carries for 3 yards. You know, Leonard carried the ball 17 times. Don't tell me that Jeremiah Love was 100% because he wasn't. There's just no way. There's no way you have a guy that is that big a part of your offense only getting 4 carries unless he's banged up. And there was so many, and you can look back at it now because I was trying to do some research before the show today about Jeremiah Love and what they said about him. And you know, you see all these different reports. Oh, he was 65%, he was 95%. Like, I don't care what anybody says. And they could say after the game, like, oh yeah, he was fine, he was okay. It was just we were going with different guys. Nah, I don't think so. He wasn't 100%. There's no way. There's no way in the middle of that game when you're struggling to move the football and Ohio State is scoring time and time again that you don't either hand the ball off to him, try to throw a ball to him out of the backfield and try to get him in space. Like, I know they got the ball to him and you can, you know, you add the 2 throws in there. So you had 6 touches for arguably your best skill player outside, maybe him and Jaden Greathouse. I mean, those 2 guys. But to think that he only had 6 touches, if you had to do that over again, and if he's 100% healthy, yeah, I just think they would do it a little bit different. And our guy, Nick in Sarasota, who knew Todd Bowles was calling the defense for Notre Dame, house splits facing double stakes on 3rd down to lose it. Yeah, it's tough to know that was the call that they went with there. We've seen that before, especially when you have single coverage on the outside. And Ryan Day mentioned that after the game. You did such a good job in the middle of the contest of not letting Jeremiah Smith kind of go off. They did a good job. They kind of held down the fort a little bit, and then boom, right there. All it takes is one play. And that was kind of the end all be all. And that's the way that Ohio State was able to kind of put the final nail in the coffin and to secure the national championship. I know that there's going to be people today that are going to look at Marcus Freeman and say, why did you try to kick a field goal down 16 when you were, you know, behind? I didn't, you know, as more as, you know, as far as going back and forth with that rationale, I didn't necessarily hate the decision there. I didn't hate the decision for going for a field goal. You needed points in some form or fashion. And when you look at the 4th and goal situation, like, they weren't anywhere close to the goal line. If you have any issues with that, I think it's the play calling leading up to it. I think on 1st and 2nd down, you got to get at least closer to the end zone. The fact that they were unsuccessful there and the fact that they were trying to, you know, get a touchdown without trying to progress the football. Again, maybe it's different. And Jeremiah Love is 100%. I think that's what screwed him. And I think when you look at that Ohio State defense and you know that there's the barrier behind them with the end zone, they have so many good players. I think you got to try to at least get points in that situation. And yeah, and you look at Jeter, who made the kick to get him there, and he misses the kick, and it was such a weird angle on the right hash there. It almost seemed as he was lining up, it looked like he was going to miss it. You just don't see many field goals, right? It was weird. And he missed it, clanked it off the upright. But think about it. If he makes that field goal, okay, if they're within 13, right? And you just never know how the opposition is going to handle that point difference, right? You kick the field goal and you make it, you're up 13, you get the ball back, you get the touchdown, okay? And now you don't have to go for 2. Let's say you go for 7 there. So now instead of you're in a situation where it's what 31 to because they hit 15. They're at a position where they're 31-15. They kick the field goal, it's 31-18, right? They'll get a touchdown, or Notre Dame gets the ball back. They score the touchdown. They only go for 1 in that scenario. It's 31-26, right? So now Ohio State, maybe their play calling is different. They still could throw that, that deep pass. We could ultimately get to that scenario. But if Notre Dame knows that, hey, we don't have to just prevent a score, we have to prevent a touchdown, I think your defense might change a little bit. That may have gone into the rationale of thinking, that all out, zero blitz. If like, hey, let's just keep everything in front of us. If they kick a field goal, that's fine. And you're down 8, and then you have an opportunity to go down the field, score a touchdown, maybe a 2-point conversion ties it. I think the way that you coach the game is different in that scenario. It's easy to say, oh, you need a touchdown there. Yeah, I get it. But all the momentum in that time seemed like it was with Ohio State. So I don't think that was the worst call. I don't think that was the call when you look at certain decisions that coaches make and you go, oh, wow, that was the death knell. That's the reason why they didn't win. I don't think it was that. I don't think it was that at all. I think Ohio State showed a lot of resolve. They showed a lot of resilience. They were able to bounce back, and they won the football game. They were the better team. They were the better team in that game last night. They deserve to be national championships. Excuse me. They deserve to be national champions after beating Notre Dame. My whole thing is, and now now that the game is over, was that game lacking something? It just seemed like when you were watching that game, and I don't know if it's because there was a lot of other things going on, and trust me, I was watching 3 different things. I was watching the Lightning, I was watching Monday Night Raw, I was watching the national championship game. I had the audio on for all of them, so it's very confusing. But it just seemed like the buzz, I don't know if it was a little different, maybe because there were 2 blue bloods and there's a lot of people that dislike both those teams. I don't know. But even after they won, it wasn't like there was, I think, a lot of ambivalence. There was just a lot of like, all right. I don't know if Ryan Day is outside of the Buckeye fan base is the most well-liked guy. I don't know if Ohio State is a program that is well received around the country. You look at Kirk Herbstreit calling the game, and he was damn near in tears after it. He tries to hide his allegiance, but everybody knows he went to Ohio State. So I think that's, you want to talk about comparisons. There's a good one right there. And when you look at kind of the tribalism of it and the way that it's structured, when I tried to explain a couple years ago what happened with soccer when they were trying to come up with this European soccer league, the way that we were able to compare that to make it understandable and make it relevant to fans here in the United States is we try to compare it to college football because of the fans, because of the conferences and things like that, and why people would, if Barcelona and Real Madrid were hitting up Manchester United, Manchester City going, let's just go start our league. That'd be like Alabama and LSU going, hey, Ohio State and Michigan, screw the Big Ten and the SEC. We don't care. Let's just go do our own thing over here. And that's what people kind of got into it, and they understood. And I think when you look at some of the situations that we have for, the college football playoff, and when we have, soccer, there are a lot of similarities between the two. And watching that game last night, you got to put respect on Ryan Day, and you got to put respect on the Buckeyes, whether you appreciated what they did or not. But it just felt like there was something off. There felt like there was something missing. And I don't know if it was because they lost to Oregon earlier in the year or because they lost to Michigan once again, who obviously had a down year. or the fact that they didn't play in their conference championship game, there was just something missing. There was something different about the college football playoff, and there could have been fatigue too. And you bring up a good point here, Nick. 16 games wore down a lot of people, players and fans. It didn't have the same kind of buzz. And usually those bowl games mean a lot. Whether it was the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, like for many, many years, that was it. It was that game. That was that was the buildup. And when you have kind of like a buildup here and a buildup there and a buildup here, and it's like I think at the end, I don't know if the 12-team playoff really benefited the game overall as much. It did keep people more intrigued as the year went on because you were not automatically out of it. And remember, I was one of those people that were worried about it going into this entire season with the 12-game playoff. If it took away some of the importance of the regular season. And I think it did. And I don't know if I was saying that a couple of weeks ago, but I think after last night, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, did the expanded college football playoff, did that hurt the overall product? Did it affect how you viewed it? Did it affect your excitement? Do you think the expanded college football playoff ruined the regular season? Because all year long, we were worried about that. And I think you looked at it from one side and said, okay, the expanded college football playoff is good because now teams like Penn State had a chance, right? Indiana had a chance. Some of these teams that weren't going to get in, whether it was when it was just 2 teams or a 4-team playoff, now they have a chance to upset the apple cart, pull off the upset, and make a run. But we didn't really see that. We saw terrible first-round matchups. And then we saw a team in Ohio State where, again, they lost to, at the time, Oregon. They lost to, one of the best teams in the country. They lost to Michigan, their rival, who didn't have a good year. They didn't even participate in the conference championship game. So I think when it's all said and done now, we can agree, maybe we can agree, that the 12-team playoff did affect the regular season. And I don't think we realized it until after the fact because we were so excited that more teams were involved. But I think it takes away some of the, oh my God, if we don't win this week, we have no chance to win the national championship. And that was something that was so directly unique to college football that you didn't have anywhere else. Even in the NFL, you can lose a couple games, you still make the playoffs, you can still make the Super Bowl. Nobody cares about what happens in the regular season. They don't. Buffalo lost at Baltimore in the regular season. Nobody cares. What Philadelphia did to the LA Rams in the regular season had nothing to do with what you saw in the playoffs. Didn't. But now in college football, where every single week these teams had that almost survive in advance kind of mentality like we see in the NCAA tournament for college basketball, it's not the same anymore. And people are going to have to adjust. And I'm not one of those people that look at Ohio State's victory and think it's tarnished because, like, let's say they didn't beat Michigan. I think the only people that really care about that are the people that are involved in that rivalry directly. But it is different. It doesn't have that same punch. Ryan Day isn't like elevated now. And I think it did change his life. It did change his career. I don't want to take anything away from him. But I didn't see a lot of people last night on social media, giving Ryan Day a ton of credit. If anything, people are looking at the $20 million that they were able to spend to keep their players there and to bring people in as like, okay, Ohio State won. The Dodgers won the World Series. It was kind of in that same vein, like, wow, you outspent everybody else and you won. Like, woohoo. Congratulations for winning the championship that the majority of the people in the country that were betting on it were laying money on you. So, yeah, I think, and I don't want to say it was a stinker. It wasn't a stinker. But it was different. That was one of the most unique finishes to a college football game. And I'm not talking about just how the game ended, but just the overall, like how it was perceived by the country. It wasn't the same. And I don't know if I necessarily like it. I don't think more teams are better. I think you should get it down to 8 and then go from there. I don't want to see buys. I don't want to see first round blowouts. If you're seeing blowouts in the college football playoff, like, what is it for? Like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. I think 4 might be too few. I think 12 is certainly too much. Let's get it down to 8. And eventually, you go for your conference champions, a couple of wild cards. Don't tell me that Alabama should have been in there. They shouldn't have been. But it's just, I don't know. But I think at the end of the day, we can look at the college football playoff and agree that what they did this year, that's not it. That's not it. All right. I want to get into some Buccaneers talk here. We just saw some news a little while ago that it looks like Casey Rogers is interviewing with the Green Bay Packers. And for those of you who don't know who he is, Casey Rogers is the defensive line coach and run game coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And when you look at the job that the defensive line has done, you go, well, why him? Why is he one of the guys that needs to go? I know our guy, Matt Matera from Pewter Report, put that on there, and he was like, well, you look at Vita Vea and you look at Kalijah Kancey, you look at Logan Hall and how well they did stopping the run, how well they did rushing the passer. Out of all the coaches to get rid of, I don't know if that's necessarily the area that I will look into. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think it does need to start somewhere. You do need to start looking at this coaching staff and seeing where you would make the adjustments, where you would make the changes for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because it's not good overall as a whole. It's not. And when you look at the draft status of those guys, I mean, let's not act like Casey Rogers is taking a bunch of unknown defensive linemen and turning them into burgeoning stars where it's like, wow, they're playing so good that the Buccaneers just couldn't afford to bring them back. They had to go sign elsewhere. I mean, you're talking about Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey, 2 first-round picks, and Logan Hall, a second-round pick. And I know that doesn't automatically mean that they're going to be great, but I mean, Logan Hall was drafted with the 33rd overall pick. That was a high second-round pick. So you're talking about 3 guys that all got drafted in the top 33 in the NFL draft. I don't know how much credit I'm necessarily giving Casey Rogers for that. Sorry. But Todd Bowles needs to realize that changes need to be made, whether that's the personnel, whether that's the coaching. I think it's both. But I don't see this coaching staff, Todd Bowles included, getting the most out of these players when it comes to outside of the guys that are drafted in the first round. When you look at a team like the Eagles and how they draft and how guys can just step up, right? You look at what they've been able to do when guys go down. I mean, we mentioned him yesterday, and I'm going to pull it up real quick here on my drafts because he played such a fantastic game. Oren Burks, that's a perfect example. Oren Burks is a linebacker, and I'm not talking skills or position specific here. I'm just talking about coaching as a whole. Oren Burks is a guy that nobody really knew outside of the Philadelphia Eagles fan base. And look at what he was able to do when Nakobe Dean went down. There was no excuses from Philadelphia. It was the next man up mentality. And for everybody talking about the job that Detroit didn't do against Jaden Daniels, listen, that defense was battling their ass off all year long. They lost so many different guys on the defensive line to injury. Aiden Hutchinson, we know the big name. Carlton Davis went down. You had Anzalone, you had a bunch of these other guys that just kept battling. But why were they able to battle? Why were they able to win and beat? Listen, you could say they had all these injuries and they got exposed by Washington, fine. But in week 18, when they needed to win, they smoked Minnesota. And they made Sam Darnold's life a living hell. What about those guys that were playing in that game? They did a good job against Justin Jefferson. What about those players? Those players got coached up. And I don't necessarily know if you see that from the depth of this Buccaneers team, the depth of this Buccaneers defense, where when guys get opportunities, they make the most of them. Who, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, who on the Buccaneers defense is really pushing for starting spots? We don't see it. You don't see it on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, you saw it from the running back position from 2 different guys. You saw it from Bucky Irving how he was able to usurp Rachaad White as RB1, but you also saw it when Sean Tucker, when he got his opportunity, he was NFC Offensive Player of the Week. So the Buccaneers on the defensive side of the ball, they need to do a better job of cultivating this young talent. It's not just about, all right, well, you're taking your first or top 33 picks, because I'm going to lump Logan Hall in there and going, yeah, just go out there and do your thing. Come on, man, not taking anything away from those players, but or what amazing coaching technique did Casey Rogers really have to do for a guy like Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey to get the most out of those guys? If anything, the only reason why they're leading the team in sacks is because the disability of the guys on the outside to do their job. So yeah, should other coaches move on? Probably. I think this is a step in the right direction. Again, if you're just going to look at numbers, you're just going to look at the rush defense and the sacks. Okay, that's an argument. I get that. But changes need to be made. And I think this is kind of the first step in that direction. The first step into Todd going, hey, you know what? This wasn't good enough. This wasn't good enough. That was not, and Ian said this yesterday. If you missed our chat with Ian Beckles, it's on our page. He joins us every Monday at 11:30. Every Monday at 12:30, and we'll have the Beckles and Recher podcast tomorrow at 3 p.m. on all of our social media platforms. But he said the Buccaneers defense was not a championship defense. Can we all agree to that? And it's not in this scenario about like whose fault is it more than the next guy? Is it Todd? Is it Casey Rogers? Is it George Edwards? Is it this guy? Is it that guy? Like, no, it's everybody. Everybody needs to take a look in the mirror. And if the Buccaneers are at a point where they need to make changes on the defense, and out of all the people, okay, and you want to say who's the least at fault, it may be Casey Rogers. I'm not disputing that. I'm not saying they should get rid of him because he did a bad job. Can't necessarily say that about some of the other guys. But if the Buccaneers and Todd Bowles, they did not renew his contract and they think they need to make an adjustment in that spot and they need to freshen it up, I find it hard to think that that's the wrong move, because we all know that there are symptoms to this problem that need to be rectified. We don't know about behind the scenes. We don't know about getting the most out of some of these younger players, some of these interior linemen. And I hope that it's for the betterment of this team, because that defense, if they can just make incremental adjustments and improvements, think about what this team could look like next year. Because the offense, even if Liam Cohen doesn't come back, I still think is going to be a force, not just in the NFC, but the entire National Football League. And it's funny because a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about in the last 2 weeks, you're starting to hear more and more people say, I truly believe that the Buccaneers will be fine if Liam Cohen moves on. And I've been trying to put some poison pills out there. I know you've probably seen it on social media, telling the Jaguars, even tagging the Jaguars. Robert Saleh is a great fit. He's a great fit. Even our guy Jamal St. Cyr up there in Jacksonville, who I was talking to on Instagram before, we got to get him on the show once they hire a head coach. I said, man, can't do it, man. Liam Cohen's allergic to cats. He goes, man, we got medicine up here. I go, nah, that medicine's only in Tampa. Robert Saleh is a cat guy. I'm trying to put that poison. It actually, there's a lot of people are like, what is wrong with you? What are you talking about? I'm trying to make sure that Robert Saleh or anybody else, any of those other guys, goes to Jacksonville and Liam Cohen stays here, because yes, I do think that is the best case scenario, is Todd Bowles coming back and Liam Cohen coming back for the 2025 season. Run it back one more time. Run it back one more time. There's no way you're telling me, if you're Liam Cohen, that the Jacksonville job is a job that is like, damn, don't want to miss out on that one. Liam has the connections, right? He knows the Sean McVays of the world and inherently knows a bunch of those other guys in that Sean McVay coaching tree. I'm sure he knows Kyle Shanahan. I'm sure he knows guys like Kevin O'Connell. So that means he's got like the branches throughout the entire league. What he did this year with a rookie running back in Bucky Irving, what he was able to do when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both went down, and with Baker Mayfield, giving him a second straight year of good offensive play. I don't think that goes away in one offseason. I do not believe that it's going to be the same scenario that we saw with Byron Leftwich. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where he has to jump at this job like we saw with Dave Canales. Because when I look at Liam, and we'll talk about Byron first, there is a transparency, there's an openness about Liam Cohen that we did not see with Byron Leftwich. You guys saw that. You heard it. You heard in these press conferences, I think it was every Thursday, and Byron's literally arguing with members of the media about things that are facts, not opinions. People in the media bringing up the fact that they were the worst rushing team in the game. Last. And Byron's arguing this point. Like, we don't have access to the numbers. Like, we do. You could have a differing opinion on why that is, Byron, but the fact of the matter is you're dead last. Now it's not. Now it's different. Now you see a guy like Liam Cohen bringing up this team to the fourth best rushing attack in the game. So that's why I don't think that Liam Cohen would go down a similar path to Byron Leftwich, where he's even offering his services to a guy like Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, and they're like, nah, we're good. Thanks, but no thanks. I don't see Liam Cohen in the same vein as I see a guy like Dave Canales, where I think Dave Canales was still learning on the job. I don't know if he was really ready to be a play caller in the National Football League last year. We go back to the Week 18 press conference that he had, and he was very, very honest and open and transparent. A polar opposite of Byron Leftwich. And that was refreshing in that aspect, the difference between those two coaches. But the truth, the reality is that you don't want your guy that has been tasked to forming and establishing an identity, not knowing what it was in the final week of the regular season. And you look back, remember the score of that game? Let's look back together. Last year's Buccaneers record in 2024, I don't even have to look up, it was 9-0. You guys remember that? Was that really the confidence that you got from the offense? Ugh. Not for me. Not for me at all. So when you look at his ability, and then we'll go back kind of some of those games. Yep, 2023. Last game of the regular season, 9-0. The week before, New Year's Eve day, when they had to beat New Orleans, they scored 13 points at home against the New Orleans Saints. Trey Palmer was your leading receiver in that game. Carolina, on the road, need to win to get in, to be 9-8. Baker Mayfield threw the ball for 137 yards, and the Bucs scored 9 points in Carolina. You want to talk about not finishing strong? Yikes. That's why Liam Cohen's different. Liam Cohen's different than both these guys because he was learning, he got better. And that's why I don't want him to leave. But if he does, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, they are in a much better spot now than the last couple of seasons if they were looking for an offensive coordinator. Is it ideal? No. But that is the nature of the beast when your head coach is not an offensive coordinator. The Rams don't have to worry about something like this. The Chiefs don't have to worry about something like this. The Vikings don't have to worry about something like this. But unfortunately, you do if you're the Buccaneers. Is it a death knell for this team and this offense? No, I don't think so. Because this job is a lot more attractive. Just put yourself in the position of a guy that was looking at offensive coordinator openings in the National Football League last offseason compared to this one when it comes to the Bucs. Last year, uncertainty at the quarterback position. Okay. Baker, okay, he had one good year under Dave Canales, but one thing that we know about Baker is he hasn't been able to double up these years. And I'm talking about the mindset last offseason. You got Rachaad White, but is he a true RB1, right? You also at this time didn't know about the future of Mike Evans because at this point last year, he did not sign back with the Buccaneers. Your offensive line still had some holes to address. Remember, you didn't have Bev Bredesen at this point last year. You didn't have Graham Barton at this point last year. You were unsure maybe a little bit about Cody Mauch. You knew you had Luke Gedeke and Tristan Wirfs, two good anchors on the outside of the offensive line. What about the tight end position? There's a lot of questions going into last regular season. But now, let's say Liam Cohen leaves and you're an offensive coordinator and the job opening for the Buccaneers is presented to you this offseason. Back-to-back years of Baker Mayfield, good with the team. He's settled, and there's proof of concept when it comes to an offense that works for him. Running backs, how many you want? We got 3. Rachaad White, serviceable, can catch a ball out of the backfield, durable as hell. Bucky Irving, the best rookie running back in the game this year. And Sean Tucker, NFC Offensive Player of the Week, who you could do a lot worse for your third best running back being that guy. Mike Evans will be back next year. Of course, you have uncertainty about Chris Godwin, but you also have Jalen McMillan, who you didn't have last year. You also have 3 tight ends, I think, that grew exponentially this year with Cade Otton, Payne Durham, and Devin Culp. The first 2 guys really being more well-rounded as tight ends. And then your offensive line. Graham Barton is the rookie center. Made some mistakes. That's going to happen. But I think when you watch that kid's tape, you go, that kid's the real deal. Lifer. 4/5 of your offensive line are intact going into next season. You have Cody Mauch at the guard spot. You have Graham Barton. You have Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke on the outside. Oh, yeah. Tristan Wirfs, left tackle. All pro. Sign me up for that. So that's why in years past, Buccaneers offense coordinator, you might get a thanks, but no thanks. Maybe we'll look somewhere else. Maybe we'll go to the Falcons. Maybe we'll go here. Maybe. Now people are like, me? You want me? I'm in. Let's do this. Lot different mindset, lot different perspective, I think, in this offseason when it comes to that spot. I want to get to here with Louie. Louie, what's up, pal? I would love to see the Buccaneers try to pull something out where they can trade for Max Crosby. Just saying, I am okay with giving up our 19th overall pick and something else because this is win now mode. We don't have time to develop. We've seen the magic that they can do with the salary cap as well. Listen, when it comes to the pass rushing situation, it's so hard to really go out and get a guy. I think really at any spot, the NFL is just so much different. The NFL free agency in this league, you don't want to let good players go. You really don't. You hold on to those guys as long as humanly possible. And then when you do, like, you make a move and you really hope it works out. And sometimes you have to pay that guy. You have to fork over the cash. And when I look back at the Roquan Smith deal where he gets drafted by the Bears, he's a pretty good player. And Baltimore's like him. Even though they had Patrick Queen out of LSU, they were like, no, that's the guy we want to build around. They trade for him, they pay him, and then boom, he's one of the best players in football. Max Crosby, in my opinion, is worth it. If you are going to spend the draft capital, if you are going to pony up the dollars to get a pass rusher, I know ideally you would love to draft and develop the guy. But unfortunately, that is not what we've seen from this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team and this organization as a whole. He's got a cap hit of $27 million next year, 27.9. He's got a potential out, though, this year, which they'd have to eat, $10 million in dead cap. He's an unrestricted free agent after 2027. The one thing I love about Max Crosby is this is a guy that it doesn't matter who they're playing. It doesn't matter what the score is. It doesn't matter what the situation is for his team. He is going to give it 100% every single time. And I'm a guy that I've played fantasy football with independent defensive players the last couple of years. So as much as a regular fantasy football is like you have your quarterback and you have your running back and your wide receiver and all that stuff, we do, instead of just drafting a team on defense, we have players, and I drafted Max Crosby this year. I had Crosby and Myles Garrett. Not bad on the outside, huh? So I watched a lot of the games this year, and I kept a close eye on his statistics. And any single time you put a Raiders game on, it usually wasn't good this year. Obviously, they know that they need to improve in so many different ways, and Tom Brady is going to do whatever he can to help that out. But I think when I'm watching these games, Max Crosby he was balling. He was balling. He is not a guy that's out of the play when he's not sacking the quarterback. He's a guy that helps in the run. He's a guy that's always making plays. He's a guy that's there for his team. I would have no issues with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finding a way to get Max Crosby in a Buccaneer uniform for the 2025 season and beyond. You need a game wrecker. You need a game changer. You need somebody that you're going to line up on the opposite side of Yaya Diaby, and those two guys can go to work. Of course, you need depth in those spots. I do believe that you need to continue to draft at that position. Keep drafting keep drafting defensive linemen, keep drafting outside linebackers. Throw numbers at the situation like we see with a team like we see with teams like the Chiefs, like we see with teams like the Eagles. Those two teams throwing numbers at the issues, get guys that are just going to rotate in there. I like that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I have faith that if it's possible, Jason Light and his crew, whoever stays, could figure it out. But I would love that. I think they need to make a splash like that on the defensive side of the ball. Whether it's through the draft, whether it's through free agency, well, I don't think it could be through the draft. I think you have to make this splash through free agency or a trade. And usually through trade, because if there's a player that's that good, it is going to be so difficult to have a team let him go to free agency. So sometimes you got to trade for him. And when you have a team like Oakland, when you have a team like the Las Vegas Raiders that is really trying to establish an identity of their own, they're looking for a quarterback. Like, how many players do they really have that are going to be part of their future? They know that the rebuild is going to be a long, arduous process because there is a lot of pieces missing over there. And look at their division. You're playing in the Chiefs. You're playing in the same division as the Chiefs. You're playing in the same division as the Chargers and the Broncos. 3 playoff teams this year. It's not going to be easy. And it's going to be a little while before they can compete. So if I'm the Raiders, I'm looking to move on from Max Crosby. Well, maybe I'm not, because you need a guy like that, right? You don't want to let go of him, but he's 27. Like, how is his timeline going to match up with your timeline if you're trying to be a successful, competitive franchise? So I'll say it here and I'll say it again. I think Max Crosby would be a perfect fit for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he's not only a guy that can sack the quarterback, but he can defend the run. He's just an all-around outstanding football player. The effort that he has given the Raiders the last couple of years, especially when they're not even competitive in some of these games, it's just exemplary. It's such a great teaching tool for young football players everywhere. It doesn't matter what the score is. Give it 100% every single time out there. That's what you see from Max Crosby. I think he has the ability to transform this Buccaneers defense, take some of the load off of a guy like Yaya Diaby, give some time for Chris Braswell to develop. I do believe you still throw numbers at that position in the draft. You still got to get linebackers. You still got to get D linemen. But if there's a front office that can make this work, to make that salary work here in Tampa Bay, it's Jason Light and crew. Max Crosby would be a huge, huge move to let everybody know that the Buccaneers are serious. I don't know if they're going to be able to make that move in the draft. I think you only make it in free agency or via trade. And there's this crown jewel right there in Sin City that is just withering away on one of the worst teams in all of football, and I don't think it's going to get any better there. They play in one of the most difficult divisions in all of football with 3 other playoff teams. Jason, go get Max Crosby. That would be one of the biggest moves of the offseason, and I think that would instantly change this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. And I know it's tough because we look at some of these moves and you're always playing fantasy football. You're always playing, put your general manager hat on. I get that. But it's fun. And that is a need. That is a need for this team. David Velasquez, I agree 100%. But also, what if it's a corner and who would you trade for? No, I'm not trading any corners. I'm not trading any. This is the NFL. You don't have to give up, baseball level trades or basketball level trades or hockey level trades where you have to give up 3 players and 6 draft picks. It's just not the way it goes. They want that money off their books. Do you trade him a guy where, maybe you trade him a Braswell? I don't know if they would. I don't know if they would do that. Do you trade him a Sean Tucker in a 3rd round pick? I wouldn't hate that. You got to be smart in situations like this, and you can't be scared away. And I know our guy Shane saying getting somebody like Crosby, a game changer, 4 years, $94 million. I know it's scary. It is scary. But that's what you got to do, guys. You got to pay guys like this. It's a premium. I don't know if I would give, and I know Louis saying I would give up our 19th overall pick. I wouldn't give up a 1st round pick, Louis. I wouldn't give up a 1st round pick. Because you can still get a player that can contribute in a big way, like we saw with Graham Barton, like you saw with Kalijah Cansey. My whole thing is that if you trade for a guy like Max Crosby, and I don't think it'll be Rashad White, but let's say you trade a 3rd and Tucker or maybe Rashad White for Max Crosby, right? Knowing that you're still going to have to pay the guy. I think you help your draft process because you eliminate some of the positions that you need to go out and get. So at 19, and we've had this discussion with Scott Reynolds, we have this discussion with Greg Allman, a bunch of people. What position do you think the Buccaneers would draft at 19? And it really comes down to 3. It comes down to edge rusher, corner, or linebacker. And I think if you get a guy if you go out and get a Max Crosby, you can still draft a pass rusher, but you're not going to do it with your 1st round pick. I think it just makes it easier for you. I like it because it limits it down to 2 position groups instead of just 1. If you go from 2 to 1 and then your guy's not there, and let's say you're picking like the 4th best corner, yeah, you're screwed. Then it'd be better maybe to trade back. But you still have 2 big position groups of need, even if you bring him in to fortify the outside pass rush. You go get corner. You go get a corner. You add him into the group, right? With Zion, with Jamel Dean. I think that makes a lot of sense. You look at what the Eagles did, drafting a couple of rookie corners and the impact that they've had. Go get another corner with 19. No issue with that. Whether Levante David comes back or not, you need interior linebackers. Go get somebody. I don't care who it is. You want a guy, maybe you get somebody out of Georgia, like Jalen Walker. I'm not going to oppose anybody taking a Georgia or an Alabama player in the first 2 rounds of the draft. And it looks like Jalen Walker, his spots, could be falling a little bit. Some people like it. Some people don't like him. But I think you look at Jalen Walker. Obviously, Todd Bowles knows that Georgia defense. If you tell me that the Buccaneers are going to trade for Max Crosby and with their 19th pick draft Jalen Walker, that's a great start. That's a great start to changing this Buccaneers defense. Nelson Vidal says, give up Dean for a 99th round pick. I'm going to actually check into that, Nelson. 99th round pick. There's 7? That means you would have to trade him for a draft pick. And I know what you mean. I know you're joking. But if you did the math, you trade him for a draft pick in like 2045. Oh man, that's funny. I don't think you're gonna get that. Not with this defense. We don't have time to develop. I don't think Jamel Dean goes anywhere. No, probably not. And this is why you have to be careful of who you get your information from. I can't stress this enough. People that only cover the teams here locally every once in a while, people that are national pundits. Listen, I'm not taking anything away from guys like Ian Rappaport or Adam Shepard. The information and the connections that those guys have to have these sources to disseminate the information quicker than the guys that cover this team on a daily basis. That's what they do. That's why they're the best of the best. But when you just see some slapdick on some random Twitter handle saying there's beef here, or my sources say this and this and that, like the majority of the time, guys, that's complete bullshit. People telling me that Jamel Dean and Todd Bowles, like they can't stand each other, they hate each other. Yeah, no. I saw after the playoff game a couple years ago, those guys walking out arm in arm after the game. Jamel couldn't play because he couldn't backpedal. He could only run forward. So he played special teams. You're telling me that a guy that is about to hit free agency has an injury, but he's willing to play special teams because he wants to be out there for his team, for his coach. That guy doesn't care about the team. That guy doesn't care about his coach. Get freaking bent. Get real. No way. No freaking way. And even though Jamel Dean was one of the highest prized corners in the offseason, where did he sign? Right back here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He doesn't do that if he doesn't get along with Todd Bowles. Just doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. And that's why when we have this discussion about Todd Bowles and have this discussion about Liam Cohen and the future of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their head coaching spot, you have to be very careful because those relationships go a long way. Part of the reason why a guy like Mike Evans could get that record is because the vibes within the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization, I did the hockey pronunciation, within the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization, like everybody contributes to that. It's Jason Light, it's the guys in the front office, it's Todd Bowles, it's the players, it's Liam Cohen. Like everybody contributes into that. Everybody is moving forward in the same direction. Everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction. And we know this in sports, and we've seen it from, it doesn't even have to just be football. You see this with other teams and other sports. One bad apple can ruin the whole freaking thing. Look at Antonio Brown. You had a Super Bowl winning team with the greatest quarterback of all time, and everybody's trying to run it back. And before you know it, here's Antonio Brown taking his shirt off and dancing through the end zone. One bad apple. Have we seen any bad fruit under the watch of Todd Bowles? Not one. Not one. You know why? Because he's a respected man, he's a respected leader, and that kind of thing permeates throughout the entire franchise. Nobody steps out of line, and Todd doesn't need to say things like that. Because, you know why? Because he has Levante Davids, he has Will Golston, he had Mike Evans. Those guys know, those guys were there. They're Super Bowl champions. Nobody can ever take that away from them. But there's a candor, there's a professionalism. It's an unspoken thing. It's unquantifiable. You can't put a number to it. That you don't really know it until you don't have it. And it's something that this Buccaneers team definitely has with Todd Bowles. I understand the shortcomings. I understand the lack of adjustments. I understand people under not being too thrilled with this clock management. I get that aspect of it. I understand. But the respect, the professionalism that permeates through this team, Todd Bowles is a big part of that. The leadership core, big part of that. The more you start taking things like that away and taking pieces away from that, it changes. It's so difficult for teams to be able to adjust on the fly and to be able to bring people in that knows what it takes to win, knows what it takes to be on the same page. We're seeing it with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, two teams that have won championships in the last 5-6 years that are trying to retool on the fly. Other teams, they lose their star players, they win the championship, they go right in the shitter, and things change, right? But you look, you got to make decisions that are tough. Julian Breezeball, even though I still hate it. Steven Stamkos, letting him walk. But one thing that helps you is you bring in a guy like Jake Gensel, who's an ultimate professional, and you still have your backbone of leadership and championship pedigree. From Julian to Cooper to Victor Hedman to Ryan McDonough to Eric Chernak to Anthony Cirelli to Andre Vasilevsky. You have those guys in place so that you can deal with that drop off if there is one. But one day we're going to go down the line and we're not going to see any players on the Tampa Bay Lightning nor the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that have championship pedigrees. Just the way it goes. There's roster turnover. Eventually guys retire. We talked about Father Time when we started the show today. You can't make light of that when you're trying to figure out who should be the leaders of your team, because leadership is a huge thing. And I know a lot of people want to bring it up when teams don't win, but just think about it. The Buccaneers haven't won the championship in a couple of years. You haven't said once that it's a lack of leadership. You haven't said once it's because everybody was, nobody was in line. Everybody was jumping ship when things went wrong. Nobody's saying that. Even in back-to-back seasons where the Buccaneers go through losing streaks in the middle of the year. Now, part of you could say, hey, well, that's Todd's fault in the first place. We shouldn't even be going on those losing streaks. But it happens in sports. It happens in football. It's a long year. It's a physical game. But Todd has the respect of his players, respect of the coaches, where it's like, stick with the plan. Stick with what got us here. Stick with what you know gets you to a point where you can be a productive professional. The best coaches in sports, and I know everybody wants to be fiery and all these things, the best coaches in every sport are the ones that don't get too high, don't get too low. They're even keel. And when everything around them seems to be falling, they find a way to galvanize the group and keep pushing forward. We have that with Todd Bowles. And even though he may have shortcomings, be aware that when he's not here, you may not have those same qualities in the next guy. All right, let's bring her in. One of our favorite guests of all time, friend of the program, lightning reporter. She does it all for our Bolts, the one and only Gabby Shirley. Hello, my friend.
Hi, Jay. How's this camera situation? Should I be horizontal, vertical?
No, you're good. You're good.
All right.
No issues. You're on the laptop today, so you're good.
Well, no, I'm on my phone.
Oh, you're on your phone on the top. Okay.
Propped up with the laptop. We're a mess.
You're good. Whatever, as long as you're comfortable, that's fine. Where are we at? Are we? You're in Montreal now, I presume.
Yes, in Montreal.
How's the weather?
Jay, I haven't gone outside, and I don't plan on going outside until I have to go to the game.
That is a girl that's been in Florida for way too long. It's actually snowing in parts of Florida right now, so it's pretty wild. No, I am not. I haven't looked. Somebody just said it's snowing in Wesley Chapel, but yeah, it's freezing here today. We got some nasty freezing, not freezing rain, but it's not nice here. So this isn't your typical Tampa weather that we, you and I both moving from the northeastern side of the U.S. Like, this is what we signed up for. Feels like 47 right now. It's going to get down to, I guess, 42, 39 tomorrow. It's just going to be nasty the next 3 days. Did you guys leave last night or this morning?
Yes, we flew from Toronto last night. So obviously second half of a back-to-back, no morning skate. Not a whole lot going on. I think there was a team meeting. But yeah, that's why I'm not leaving the hotel until I have to.
Very, very smart. Before we get into the games, I posted something on social yesterday about us and how we cover Nikita Kucherov, because he's such a unique athlete. And, I kind of spoke about it in the podcast yesterday. And again, not bad mouthing him, not saying he's just such a unique individual. Right. And we all know, like, going into that post-game press conference, like how it is, right? Like, we know he's not going to give like any of these long answers. That's why you asked about Andrei Vasilevsky, because we know he hates talking about himself. Like, he's such a deferential superstar. He doesn't want it to be about him, but it is a unique experience, like, covering him, because we try to be respectful, knowing that he doesn't love it so much, right? But also, like, knowing that we have to do our job as well. The other night, it was only 30 seconds, but I thought you handled it with all class and professionalism. But it is unique, right? Knowing that we're going into the locker room talking to a guy that really, and it's not personal. I don't take it personal, and I know you don't either, but it's just, it's unlike any other athlete that I've ever covered.
Oh, gosh, Shay. This one has kept me up at night. This is my 4th season with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I would say it's the first season where I decided not to take it personally, because previously I had. It's just hard not to when I feel like I'm around so much. Like, it seems that your teammates trust me. You probably aren't, like, I'm not high on his radar. He's not paying attention to everything I do. But perhaps if I did something bad, he would have heard about it. So for 3 seasons, Jay, it was very personal for me. I would get very upset. I would get very anxious. And I guess I was under the impression that if I worked really hard, tried really hard, did this right, did that right, he would come around. And I have learned now that I'm older and wiser that he is not coming around. It doesn't matter what you do. He's not coming around. I actually, Jay, and I guess I should say, and we're not doing this here, but being on the team side, like I usually just let it go because I respect him just being him, honest to God. But I don't want to talk about it too much because it just I feel it doesn't really come off too well. However, in Toronto, because it was just after he had reached his 600th NHL assist and that press conference happened, I had overheard Toronto media asking Nick Paul about Nikita Kucherov. And I heard Nick Paul say, which I was like, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense. I heard Nick Paul say to the effect of, like, he's authentic, he's never going to change. And then Nick Paul said he only cares about his family and his team. And that's it. And right with that being said, Jay, hockey and winning. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like I think that's what it is. He doesn't care about the media. He doesn't care how he's portrayed in the media. He sees no benefit, doesn't care if it's a negative effect on himself. And that just is what it is.
Yeah, it's funny too because the when I'm walking out the other night, who am I walking out with but Pointer? And he's like, some game, huh? And I go, yeah. And I was like, we just talked to Cooch for 30 seconds. He's like, 30 seconds. And I go, you know how. And we just laughed on the way out because it's just how he is. And I was at that point too with you. Like I was, I try to do all the right things, and everybody else is, a lot of guys are more cordial, and it's just the way it goes. That's his personality. I love the consistency. I love that's him, right? He does it with everybody, and you kind of learn, and it's just us doing our jobs better too, and understanding like that's the way it's going to be. And, maybe we craft our questions in a different way, right? To like get him to be a little bit more expansive. But if he doesn't, like, hey, we did our job, and you just kind of move on. It doesn't mean that, we don't like him or he's a bad guy. Like I thoroughly enjoy him. And when I got to talk to him at the All-Star game a couple years ago, he was he went on. And I was like, oh, this is great. I was like, we're going to have to, but then we go back to Tampa and it was the same thing. And I was like, all right, Nikita, I appreciate it, buddy. Just keep going out there and doing your thing. All right, let's get to some of the action from last night. It's always interesting to see the Toronto Maple Leafs in action against the Lightning because you can tell that some of those losses that Toronto had years ago against the Lightning, it's still in there. Like they want to beat the Lightning every single time that they play. There's a mutual respect, for lack of a better term, but unfortunately the Bolts came up a little bit short last night. But good to see a guy like Jonas Johansson with Vasi getting the night off, really, giving it everything he had and giving the Bolts a chance to win.
Yeah, I thought Jonas Johansson played really well, Jay. I believe that the majority of people were shocked that he was in net. Perhaps the average hockey fan, you see a back-to-back and you pick which team you think is better and you assign Andrei Vasilevsky to that team. John Cooper was asked about it and said that this was just the way the schedule went. And the Tampa Bay Lightning do have a schedule for their goaltenders prior to the start of the season. Right. But also, Jay, you may remember that Andrei Vasilevsky was pulled in Toronto the last time the Lightning faced them there. So, right, who actually knows if there was a really niche reason why Jonas Johansson started that game? It doesn't really matter. He played great. I just know it was a topic of discussion. But yes, he played really well. And I don't mean to simplify it so much. However, Jay, I think I can just point to the Tampa Bay Lightning not starting on time. We know they've had issues with their starts, not liking their first period. They get down. It's tough to pull themselves out of a hole, no matter if it's 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals. And that happened again last night.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of been the bugaboo for this squad a little bit this year. And kind of what you're saying about Vasilevsky, and we've seen this at times where the teams that are maybe a little bit lower on the points, the Cooper has gone in that direction of like, all right, this is kind of, I don't want to say the sure win, but he's played vastly against the lesser team because you feel like almost like you steal a game against Toronto with your backup goalie. And that it's whatever. It's the rhyme or reason. That's kind of what Cooper's been doing for many, many years. And then also you look at it, Toronto being ahead of them in the standings, maybe Montreal, you want to keep them a little bit lower in the standings to kind of secure your spot there in the Atlantic and knowing the difficulties in the division. Why do you think the Lightning have had some difficulties so far this year in the division against these teams that they really know? I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to it. And I don't know if necessarily it bothers me going forward because I've seen years where the Lightning get swept by a team and then beat them in the postseason. Do you think it's more of a coincidence or do you think there's any rhyme or reason to it?
Oh gosh, Jay, it's a really good question. And right, I guess for so prior to the Toronto game, they were 3-6 versus teams in the Atlantic. So now they're 3-7. So right, the games are stacking up. But for I would say the past 4 Atlantic Division matchups, it was, well, we haven't actually seen that many teams in our division.
Right.
But now again, they're seeing these teams and they just can't seem to get the win. I feel like it's just got to be coincidence. I don't know. It's strange. We know how tight this division is. John Cooper, this doesn't really answer your question too well, but John Cooper was asked about the Leafs and kind of just what sort of different team they are this year. Of course, it was after the loss, so Coop probably wasn't really into explaining, but he just said they have a new coach. Like, it's the same play. And I mean,
yeah.
Teams from year to year, they don't change all that much. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. But I certainly know that the Lightning are aware of that record and would like to better it.
You got that right. And they take on the Montreal Canadiens tonight. Martin St. Louis behind the bench, so a familiar face there. What did you like from Max Crozier? And then unfortunately, we know that Eric Chernak and we know Julian's playing some of those cap gymnastics to make sure that you send Crozier down, bring him back up. You got to try to save as much money as possible for later on in the year. But what have you made of Max Crozier since he's been called up? I really like the kid, and I like the physical aspect that he brings. He's not afraid to lay some hits on some of these players.
No, Jay, he is not. Yes, I am a huge fan. I say that about most everyone in our Tampa Bay Lightning organization. These players are just class individuals. Max Crozier, so lovely. We saw him last season and he did pretty well. I meant, Jay, to go back and see the wording used when we first saw him last year. The word steady sticks out to me, and I'm not sure if that's because I did hear it previously or if it's just a good example of how he plays. But he comes in. It's hard to come in to the NHL, even if you've been here before, and just step into a role. He has been paired with Ryan McDonagh. Last year, when he was with the Lightning, he was primarily paired with Emil Lilleberg, who he played with in Syracuse. Obviously, Ryan McDonagh is back with this organization, so he's never played with him before. And I liked what I saw from him. As I said, great guy. I think he did really well, considering he was just thrown in the mix. After his first game, I did ask him specifically about that pairing with McDonagh. He's a great interview, Jay. And Max told me, I don't think I have ever been paired with like a better, easier player to play with. Like Ryan McDonagh just made it so easy on me. I enjoyed playing with him. I didn't get into would you learn from him in however many minutes you were on the ice together in one game, but he really enjoyed playing with him. Yes, Jay, he's physical. I believe he told Brian Engblom, probably in terms of what have you worked on? How have you evolved your game yourself? And he told Engblom that he had put on about 10 pounds, which I think adds to him wanting to be able to play that physical game. He is good at it. He does not shy away from anything. Jay, in his season debut with the Lightning, you may remember at the end there was a little bit of a questionable hit on Connor Geekie, slid into the boards, and Crozier went after the guy. And I found this out. I was kicking myself for not knowing it sooner, but Geekie, who also is new to this Lightning team and organization, and Crozier trained together in the offseason this past summer. So they're actually buddies prior to just playing with the Lightning for Crozier 2 games this season.
This is the kind of tidbits you're getting on the Recher podcast from our friend Gabby Shirley. She's all over it. I love the kid. I think the sky's the limit. He's unflappable. Like nothing seems to bother him. You just kind of
Steady.
look around. He's able to get inserted into lineup with a multitude of partners and be able to perform at a high level. You mentioned Ryan McDonough. I'm actually working on a story for TampaBayLightning.com on Ryan McDonough. Yes, I'm efforting that. It's tough because I'm not a big time writer. But when it comes to a guy like Ryan McDonough, what kind of impact that you seen from him when it comes to his ability to step up when the leadership role? Because obviously, you there? Oh, I think we lost you. Oh, there you are.
Jay,
You're back.
I lost
We
you.
got you. No, we're back. We're back. We're good. Got it? We're good?
Can't hear you.
3, 2, 1. Boom, boom, boom. Can we hear me now? Oh, no, it's the Montreal. That's what it is. Hold on. Let me do the remove and add to stage. Still no?
I had
Hear
a
me
phone call.
Oh, that's what it was. When the phone call
And
goes
then I
down.
lost your audio.
Oh, she'll get it back here in 3, 2, 1. Once the phone call, that's what happens sometimes on these phones. You get a phone call, the phone, it'll be in the background, and then Gabby will get us back. She'll get us back in 3, 2, 1. Is it back? No. Try it. No. Try it. Here we go. She's working on it. Oh, off and on. Oh, off and on. Oh, she did the off and on. I like that. You got me back? Oh, man. She's trying. She's efforting. I really want to ask her about Ryan McDonough. Maybe we could do this. Do the remove, add to stage, back. Hello. It's because there's a phone call in the background. That's what happens sometimes when you do the StreamYard. Good. Oh. Oh, she left. Okay, we'll see if we can get Gabby Shirley back. That was funny. She tried. That's the advances in modern technology sometimes when you try to, you get these phone calls in the background, and what you do is like you kind of swipe away to like get them to go and be like, hey, I'll come right, I'll be right back or whatever. And then and then it's in the background. So like you ignore it, and then instead you're like, come back. I'm gonna text her, come back for one more. Come back for one question. She's so funny. She goes, I do not know what happened. I said, come back for one more. Let's see if we can get her back real quick. Unless she's got to go. But I really want to ask her about Ryan McDonough real quick, just because I have the perils of live podcasting, SRQ Tom. You're right, Tom. You're all over it. We'll see if Gabby can get back in here because we really want to talk to her about the end of this. Yeah, there she is. Let's see if this works. All right. You got me?
This is a disaster. That was my husband. I'm going to yell at him.
It's okay. You can hear me now, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Jay. I just ignored the phone call. I don't know what happened.
No, what happens sometimes when you ignore the phone call and you put it in the background? Did you just swipe up on it or did you exit?
I X'd it.
Oh, okay. Sometimes when you swipe up on it and it stays in the background, it almost like occupies the audio.
Ugh.
So
I'm going to have to start doing this on my computer. This is just
That's
silly.
okay. This is great. This is live podcasting. This is great. This is why we love it. I asked you about Ryan McDonough before your husband so rudely interrupted us, but tell him that we love him.
Okay, continue.
But Ryan McDonough, his impact of just maybe not so much on the ice, Gab, but like off the ice, and because you're with the team. And when I think of Ryan McDonough, I think of family, I think about leadership, and just talk about his impact just on the overall vibe and community of the team.
Yes, Jay. And you know what? Not to say I can't answer your question, but I feel like in those terms, he is such a leader. And those are the things that I don't always see because I feel like they are in the background. He never shies away from the media, but I feel after a skate, when, it's a little bit more casual talking to the players, just because he's a veteran and perhaps he might be rushing home to the fam, he's out pretty quick. So I don't always see those interactions, but we know through talking to him just the type of person he is, what he brings. Yes, a big family man. In our latest episode of Recharge, we went with him and his wife and his 3 kids to Busch Gardens. That was really exciting and sweet to see. I will say, Jay, on like the team side, I knew before he left, and now that he's back, when there are questions sometimes on scheduling or meal preferences or this, that, and the other, he's a go-to because he has a pulse on the team. He knows what everyone wants, what everyone needs, and is just just a responsible individual. So yeah, his impact, like, it can't be overstated.
He's an adult. Got some young players on the team. He's the adult. He's the dad
I mean,
with
at
the three
my age,
kids.
I'm an adult too, Jay, but I don't know if I'm all that responsible sometimes.
Yeah, don't tell anybody that. Yeah, I try to not admit that I'm adult in real life, but it is what it is. How's the podcast going with our guy Ben Pierce, man? He's a fun dude, man. I'm glad that he's here in the Tampa Bay area, part of our Bolts contingent here.
Jay, he has been great. Jumped in seamlessly. I think our podcast is going well. I don't know if you have time to tune in. You should. I would love your feedback, number one.
Yes.
Number two, though, and I told my boss that without meaning to, perhaps I was just taking a little bit of the easy road, and I don't like doing that. Jay, we had been, and like I just would look on like the big cardboard printed calendar we get at the beginning of the year sitting at my desk and say, okay, we're recording Wednesday. The previous Wednesday, all right, so let's hit on this. This happened in this game. Okay, all right, we got our outline. And my boss said, like, wait, like we already know everything that happened. And for better or for worse, the people listening to the podcast are probably the dedicated Lightning fans. So they also already know what happened. Why don't we look ahead? And Jay, it just hadn't even dawned on me. And or it's also challenging for me because I am a big, who am I playing today? Who am I playing tomorrow? And that's all I'm looking at. So now looking at like a week in advance, we're trying to do that. It started last week and we're going to do it again in our recording tomorrow. So if you have a chance to tune in, you'll have to let me know how we're doing, if we're giving you more things to look forward to rather than boring you with things that already happened.
You could never bore me. All right, I'll definitely tune in. And one thing that I do love about you, and this is kind of going back to what you were talking about before, is that you have done such a great job over the years of being so transparent and so honest about the education of your profession. And you and I have talked about this on air, off air, and I just want you, because you realize that, I think, or you're starting to realize it even more now, being with the team for what, 4 years now, the impact that you're having on the next generation, and especially the young females that are aspiring to be a broadcaster. How does that education process affect kind of your daily, I don't want to say life, but how you approach the job every single, especially on a day like today, where it's a little bit more of a laid back? How do you balance out the work and the life aspect of everything? Because you do want to relax, you do want to chill out a little bit. Maybe you want to enjoy a restaurant or a cup of tea or coffee at a certain city, but at the end of the day, there's got to be that work-life balance. So how have you learned over the last couple of years, I guess, the best ways to find that balance?
I think I'm still learning. And I had a recent conversation on a point I'm about to bring up, Jay, but I guess for me, on a day like today, second half of a back-to-back, not many requirements as far as me being at a skate or having questions ready for the locker room. So it just kind of comes down to my checklist of what I need to have prepared for the game, how I can best prepare myself. Right. In that regard, of course, you can always cut corners. Usually that shows. And then you can also be an overachiever. And I would really like to be that person every day. Sometimes it's hard. But I bring up my boss again, the great Brian Briesman. I just had a meeting with him and I was talking about like that old saying, Jay, and I can't even actually say it right, but like, don't fix what's not broken. But I feel maybe by default, I've kind of been following that, and that's not good because that's not how you grow. So what I'm doing now, it works, and I think I'm doing a good job, but I would like to try new things and push myself here. And instead of doing it this way, let's be brave and do it this way. So on days like today, when it's a little bit slower, I do look like a mess because I just went to the gym. But I try to keep that in mind. Obviously, hitting everything on my checklist and then trying to do something more.
That's great. I mean, that's the most important thing is making sure you have that balance, but making sure that you never get to a point where that you're complacent and you're trying
Right.
to push yourself to be the best version of yourself every day, whether it's personally or professionally. So you're doing a great job, Gab, and you're making us all happy and proud of you. And I love your jackets. I mean, they're the only things that rival my shoes in the Tampa Bay media, if I could say so myself. You got to see, I got a special pair of shoes coming out next week when you guys come back, something with some LED lights on the bottom. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'll be looking.
I've only worn them one other time. And the last time I wore them, the only time I wore them, when I saw John Cooper, he literally got down on his hands and knees and pointed at my shoes so that his wife could take a picture to send it to their kids. So those kind of shoes, they're coming out in the next week or so. But yeah, check out Gabby Shirley on all social media platforms. Gabby_Shirley_. She does a little bit of everything. Let everybody know when they can hear the podcast and when they can see you, because you're on FanDuel. You're everywhere.
Podcast, we usually record Wednesdays, Jay, and then it drops on Thursday morning. Yes.
Nice.
And you can find it all over our Lightning social channels.
Yeah, TampaBayLightning.com is all the information on there. Gab, I appreciate your time. You are the greatest. Go call your husband back. Tell him that we said hello. Have a wonderful time at the game tonight and safe travels back across the border. And I'll see you next week, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Let's do this again.
You got it. The one and only Gabby Shirley. She is just so kind and so generous with her time. And it's so great because I'll ask her I'll ask her, hey, would love to have you on the podcast again. She's like, she's one of those people where you'll ask her to come on the show and she'll say, I can't because I have this, this, and this. Please, please, please make sure you ask me again. And then when I ask her, she'll text me back and she'll go, yes, with an exclamation point. You're fine. That was great. We love you, Gabby. You're the best. She said she's sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about. We love you. But she's, again, another example of great things happening to great people. She was working here locally for Channel 8. And I remember being at Amalie Arena one day, and she was just kind of looking and searching and trying to find that next step in her career, that next step in this profession. Because we don't know. We talked about life being fragile. Your career is fragile too. I mean, for myself, I didn't know. I had no idea that after 10 years, it would just be, my life would change just like that. But you got to pivot. You got to find a way to make adjustments and put yourself in a position where it's like, I'm going to make this work. And that's why we're here on the Recher podcast. And again, all of the people that you got, all you guys that tune in every single day, everybody out there that is, contributing, whether it's texting in or commenting in, you're sharing my stuff on social media, you're liking and you're subscribing on YouTube. I can't tell you how important that is to spread the word and to continue to do that. I have a lot more endeavors that are going to be coming down the pike here. Again, working with my guy Ian Beckles, the Beckles and Recher podcast tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'm going to be doing some more stuff with the Lightning, doing some more stuff with USF, and the Recher podcast is going to continue to roll on. But I can't do it, and none of us can do it without the support of all of our people here locally. I've never been that guy that has been so worried about competition or this is going to do this. And listen, if it's good enough content, people are going to come find you. People are going to support you regardless of what, you think is going to happen. I think if you act in a negative way and you treat people like shit, then obviously things like that are not going to work out. People ask me, like, why did you take the angle? Why was your point of view? Why was your perspective the way it was? How come you weren't more hurt? How come you didn't lash out? How come you didn't say all these negative things? Why are you the way you are right now? Fuck if I know. I don't know. This is just who I am. I don't know. And some people could look at like that. Oh, you should, do this and do that. I'm not the kind of person that tells anybody else how they should deal with things. So I don't want people telling me that either. I want to see people succeed. I want to see people here locally succeed. I want to see people that I consider colleagues and friends. I want to see them do well. So yeah, I don't work there anymore, but it's not that I don't want to see Nick Wise fail. I don't want to see Tom Krasnicki fail and Pat and Aaron and Mathis and everybody. Like, I want them to do well. I want them to continue to persevere because we have to support our local people here in the Tampa Bay area. Team Tampa Bay is not just some lame moniker, some weak hashtag that we put on social media. Like, that is legit. Look at the support that the teams have for each other. Look at the support that our former players that still live here in the Tampa Bay area, look at the love that they get from our fans and from the people in the local media. Like, that's legit. Tampa is such a unique place. And trust me, I moved here when I was 20 years old. And when you come to Tampa, it is so unique because it is a growing, burgeoning city, but it still has that small town feel. You can go get cafe con leche in West Tampa, right? Like, it's just those same people have been doing it for decades. And they're generations of Tampanians here. And then you have people that move here from out of the country and from out of the state, out of the city. And they'll tell you there's no place like Tampa. And there's nobody like our guy, the one and only Denard Span, looking smooth. I like the cut. Brown is looking good on you, buddy.
Yes, sir, man. What's going on? Hey, perfect segue right there, bro.
Yeah, man. And you know it as well as I do, man. It's something different. And you and I have talked about this for many, many years of me being from New York and moving down here and how important our friends and family and our faith is. And, I think that's our friendship has grown so much over the years too. And stuff like that. And obviously connected early on from our guy, AJ Lepla, who is our friend, but it's like, that's like family. And I think that's the cool thing about Tampa is that there's so many people from so many different backgrounds, so many different walks of life that when we find a way, man, that Team Tampa Bay vibe, like that's legit.
Yeah, I think, I think you hit it on the nose right there. And, I think of Tampa, I think of this community, I think of it as being a family and there just being so many like deep rooted individuals, cultures, and people that have been here, for a long time. There's like you said, you think of Tampa, you think of West Tampa, you think of Ybor City, and even East Tampa. Like that is like the true feel and culture of this city, and it's in my opinion, it's unlike any other place I've been. I've got an opportunity, obviously, to travel the world, and Tampa, it's special and it's unique, and which is the reason why you're starting to see a lot of attention come to the city, and a lot of people move to this area. They're realizing the value of this place, and people that have been here for a long time. We've known that secret for a long time. But if you're from this area or you've been here for a long time, you take being a part of this community in this city very seriously. You take it to heart.
Yeah, September 1st will be 20 years for me here in the Tampa Bay area, which is kind of wild. And you mentioned like family. I know we honored him a couple years ago at the big gala with Richard Batman Wood and the impact that he had on you and your youth. And I interviewed him years ago with Ian on WDAE, and it really does take a village. And it's funny how the sports community is just kind of like an extension of that.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's so many, people that are intertwined in this city and that have made, a huge impact that don't necessarily get the recognition. There's obviously, the big name guys that, that do, but, there's a lot of, great individuals that didn't even make it to the professional ranks that are making a huge impact. Like I can name off, at least 3 or 4 people that I played high school sports with that are back in the community, giving back, to the youth and to the, younger generation, trying to, continue to pass the torch in this city so that Tampa can be considered and continue to be considered one of the, the greatest places in the U.S.
You got that right. And I found this today, and it's ironic that you're joining us. This is actually the ball from my first pitch that went in the dirt that Ryan Pepio did like a Mark Grace scooping it out of the dirt. He said that he would catch it if I got another chance again. I said, I don't know if they'll bring me back for that, especially after the video that Denard took. But we had a good laugh about that. And and you know what's funny? I had somebody the other day comment on the talk that we had at the gala this year for the Denard Span Foundation, and something that if a lot of people don't know, and I implore you to try to get there next year because we always have so much fun. But at the end of the event this year, Denard sat down and we had a chat for like 20 minutes, and it was laid back, but it was informative, and it was about family and faith and baseball. And man, somebody made a comment. They were like, we really, really enjoyed that. And I think that that's something that we're going to continue making that event a bigger and bigger thing every year. And I know the event, and that was a lot of fun for you too.
Yeah, you know what? I had countless people, give me that same feedback as far as us making that change to the program in regards to us sitting down and, in a lot of ways, just, having a conversation and shooting the breeze. And, it was a lot different than in past years where I got up and, gave a formal speech and, a more buttoned up speech. But, I think in our conversation, people, they got an opportunity to learn a lot about, who I am, my journey, my faith journey, just my family situation and why, I have the passions that I have and why, we have the nonprofit and been doing the work that we've been doing. So, I agree. That was a great night, a great conversation from, the two of us.
Yeah, we got to keep it going, man. We got to keep it going. It's always fun when you and I get together. I want to. It's what 1:35 on a Tuesday. I think the Dodgers just signed somebody else, Denard. Man, they just got Kirby Yates a little while ago, man. These guys and listen, I grew up watching these teams out there, and it's usually the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Mets. But now we're at the point where they're starting to defer this money, Denard, where Shohei is making $2 million until he's 39 and then making $68 million until he's 48. These deferred payments, I know other teams are going to do that, or they could do that, but the Dodgers, they know that they're essentially printing money out there. Is this, I worry that this is one of the worst things to happen to the competitive balance in the major leagues. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. Why do you say that? Why do you say? I mean, because for all those years, you're from New York. You were a Yankee fan. I mean, they did it for my entire childhood.
Right.
And even early part of my career. Where they spent 3 times as much money as 90% of the league. So I just want to hear your perspective on that. Like, what do you?
It's a fair question, and that's why I was trying to adjust where my intensity was and my emotion about this was, because I know it could come off as hypocritical. Like, you grew up a Yankee fan. Like, what do you know? Right. But I do look at it in a way of where the Yankees had to pay the piper if it didn't work out right away. Like, it would affect them in the meantime. And let's not forget, the teams that were built in the mid to late 90s by the Yankees were not filled with free agents that were signed every single year.
A lot of those guys were homegrown.
They were homegrown, right? When you look at Jeter, you look at the Bernie, and you're going to use money to keep those guys. That's one thing, and I understand that, right? But the ones that didn't work for the Yankees in the early to mid 2000s, before they won in 2009, when they started paying Pavano, paying Randy Johnson, paying all these guys, it didn't work out for them. But they had to. In that moment, it didn't work out for them, and they had to immediately face the punishment. And again,
what was the punishment, though? What was the punishment?
Losing. They were getting smoked, right? They weren't even like competitive at all. They're getting bounced in the first round. When you're looking at these Dodgers teams, you're deferring these payments to 10 years down the road, where you and I both know in sports organizations, these don't depreciate, right? No owner loses money owning a professional sports team. So the Dodgers, you would think, with being that much money, $68 million to them in 10 years, that's not going to be the same as right now, right? But we know
out there and win, though. If they lose, it diminishes the return to
right. But my whole thing is, it's not even so much about the competitive. It's more about like the kind of the apathy that it gives the fans, that there's no excitement when it comes to free agency like there is in the NFL and some of these other teams. You're losing the stars all going to one place on the West Coast, and they're all going out there. And now you look at a situation where you'll have other former major leaguers saying, well, you have to go out and you got to try to tell your owner to spend more money so you can combat these kind of things. No matter what the fans say, the owners aren't going to listen to the fans. We deal with that in the scene in the area, right? Tampa Bay deals with that. You think Cleveland likes trading Francisco Lindor because they can't pay him? I just think it's kind of ass backwards that we don't have a floor where you have to pay a certain amount of money, right? But you have these teams at the top that not only can afford to pay the luxury tax, but also defer the payments and almost put these players on layaway. Like, how is that competitive? It's one thing if you just want to spend the money up front you pay the luxury tax, and then you deal with it like everybody else. Because even though the Yankees did it, the Red Sox did it too, the Mets did it too. They were just the team that was the evil empire that people hated because they also won, and they've won more than any other team. My whole thing is that it just seems to be incessant. We're trying in Major League Baseball to say, hey, Steve Cohen, don't spend more than $40 million, or we're going to tax you at a higher percentage. So you make these adjustments here, but you're not making adjustments on deferred payments where guys are getting paid into their 40s, where it's not even going to matter about anything what the Dodgers have to do because it won't count against their salary cap.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely. I guess I never looked at it from that standpoint. You're talking, 20 years from now. But I guess I was looking at it, from a layer closer,
right?
From the point of, this has been going on in baseball for our entire lives, where big market teams, they have the more resources, which means they go out there and they have the ability to sign the best players. If it doesn't work out, it's okay. They still have money and resources to plug those holes and plug those gaps. And so we've seen this story before. We've seen the Yankees. We've seen the Red Sox. We've seen, the Dodgers of, the generation before. We've seen the Cubs. We've seen these teams, go out and sign, the best players, San Diego Padres. We've seen these teams go out and do that. The Mets a couple years ago, they went out when Cohen first came in. He went for it all, similar to what the Dodgers have been doing. But there's a big difference. The Dodgers have been doing it totally different. They're doing it in a way that we've never seen this done before, where they're not only going out and signing all of the best players, but they're signing the right group of best players.
Mm-hmm.
They're you know what I'm saying? They're getting guys that complement each other. You know what I mean? You look at Mookie Betts, you look at Freddie Freeman. Those two guys are very very different, but have a lot of similarities. They complement each other. One's left-handed, right. One's right-handed. One hits. They both hit for average and power, right? You look at the World Series, the Dodgers against the Yankees. One team was one-dimensional. Another team was most high. They had more. They could beat you in multiple ways, and that's the team that won. And so I just love what the Dodgers are doing. Like, they're putting the right pieces together. Like I said, we saw with the Mets. When they got Verlander and Scherzer and Lindor, what happened 2 years later? It didn't work out. They sold everybody. We've seen the Padres do it with Tatis, Machado, Bogarts. Let's be honest; those are not the three guys that you want to put in the same lineup. They're the same guys. Why do you got three right-handed infielders in the lineup? They don't complement each other. They're three unbelievable players, but they don't complement each other. So I just think the Dodgers have, just done a great job. You talk about Andrew Freeman, Ray's DNA. All he's done is, learn how to, manage a business per se with limited resources. And he's taken it to LA, to the West Coast, and has a budget that's 6 times more than what he
with unlimited resources.
Exactly. And so, I mean, I get what you're saying, but in some ways I'm applauding it. I do agree there should be a floor. Teams should have to spend minimum $100 million or $85 million, whatever the number is, to make sure the competitiveness is somewhat there. You know what I'm saying? But you
look at a team like the Pirates, Denard. They got Paul Skeens, #1 overall pick, and they're asking him at a fan function last week, about, hey, have they talked to you about a long-term deal? He's like, no. But if you're a Pirates fan, it's like, all right, well, this guy's going to pitch for us for a couple more years, and then he'll be on the Dodgers or he'll be on the Yankees. And I'm not just saying it just because it's the Dodgers. I just think this is the latest thing where you look at the entire game of baseball, right? And I think I look at it from that scope more than anything, because you and I are baseball guys. They have to find ways to make the sport more compelling, more entertaining, there's got to be more parity. There's got to be more involvement. You need more teams invested. You need more people invested. So you're finding ways to speed up the game, right? But if you constantly have situations where all the players are going to just a handful of teams, and you have teams like the Rays that are trading Randy Arozarena, the most popular guy in the franchise's history, you're not getting the greatest return back. He didn't play great last year, but it's like, why are you going to invest in a certain team if you don't know if they're going to be there in 4 or 5 years? Yeah. Right? It's just in anything. Are you really going to put all of that work into remodeling your house and working on the pool if you know that you're probably going to move in a year, right? You know what I mean? That's why you rent. That's why you don't buy. So I worry about that because baseball needs less reasons for people to get off the highway. And they need more. And it's interesting. And I'm not surprised because a lot of former athletes are like, hey, man, you got to do what's best for you. You got to go out there. You're trying to win World Series. You're trying to get that paper. I get it.
But you got to look at it. I mean, for the Dodgers, I mean, I got to imagine a handful of those players that they've signed and they've taken that deferred money. That's money out of their pockets. That's not money technically in their pockets. Like
not now, but they're going to get it. Baseball's all guaranteed money. So they're going to get it eventually, just not right now.
They're going to get it. They're going to get it, but by the time they get that money, the value of it is not what it was when they signed it 20 years before. All I'm saying, I got to imagine that a lot of those players, going off of hearsay, I got to imagine they had offers on the table from some of these other big market teams that were somewhat comparable, and they decided not to go to those teams.
Right.
They decided they wanted to go to LA, because obviously there's really good players there. They got something going on there. And I've heard time and time about the culture with the Dodgers. I think they've done a good job at building a culture there that people want to be there. And, and being in any type of field industry, people talk around the game within that same industry, and they start hearing, oh, they got this guy over there. This is how they do things over there. Oh, they treat you with respect. Oh, they got, this type of medical staff to make sure you get, you're getting the best treatments. Whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I think you got to give the Dodgers credit. They found a way to make their brand and their culture to where people are willing to take deferred money to go and play for that organization.
Do you think the Dodgers brand is better than the Yankees brand right now?
Yeah.
It's different, right? I mean, it changes, right? I mean,
yeah.
I wonder if 15
years ago. I think Juan Soto just made that evident too, right there.
I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I think there's no way 15 years ago or 20 years ago, Juan Soto signs with the Yankees or signs with the Mets.
The Mets.
I just don't know. I 20 years ago, Derek Jeter's on that team. They're in the middle of winning. There's no way he leaves. What was your initial response when you saw that from Juan Soto taking that money, going to the Mets?
I was like, wow, $765 million. I mean, it's definitely, obviously Shohei Ohtani signed for that amount, but I was blown away. I knew he would, get a ton of money. I mean, he obviously increased his value. But yeah, I didn't think that he would get that much. I was definitely caught off guard. I think it's, it's good for the game of baseball. I think he's obviously, arguably, he's not the best player in the game. That's why I think I was shocked, because I don't think he's the best player in the game. I think he's arguably top 10, but he's not the best player in the game. He just so happened to be at the right place at the right time.
What is he the best at?
He's the best hitter. He's one of the best hitters in the game.
Right. He's the best. I think he's the best at bat in the game.
There you go.
I think he's the best hitter. Like I do like Freeman. I like Betts. I think when Trout's healthy, he's got to be in the conversation. Shohei as well. I think he is the best at bat. If you give me, and I think we had this conversation a couple months ago. You give me one guy in one spot, not Aaron Judge, not Trout, not Betts. It's Juan Soto.
I'll take him. Yeah, you can argue. Yeah, you take that. You argue that.
Yeah.
But aside from that, is he a good defender?
Yeah, he's not a 5-tool guy.
Is he a good base runner? You know what I mean? So that's why it's like, man, that's a lot of money for a guy who's obviously an exceptional hitter. Yeah. I mean, you got to imagine we'll probably see him at first base here pretty soon,
or a DH.
In the near future, he'll DH in first base, probably similar to what we see with Bryce Harper, already turning into that type of player. But yeah, that's a lot of coin. But like I said, as a former player, go get your paper, man. That's only progressing the game. When you really think about it, A-Rod signed for $250 20, 30 years ago.
And people were freaking out.
You know what I'm saying? So like, it's only going to continue. It's time for it to go up. It's kind of been in that $300-400 million range for a long time. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Denard, before I let you go real quick, let everybody know what you got going on, where they can find you and all that jazz.
Yeah. So still got the nonprofit, my nonprofit, Denard Span Foundation. You can find me on social media. I think we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Have that going on, and then gearing up for the baseball season. I'm going to be doing some commentating and analyst work with the Minnesota Twins as well as the Rays, and also potentially doing something with the Washington Nationals. So so just gearing up for that, but enjoying the rest of this off season, if you will, even though my whole life is an off season now. But
You're
man,
a dad. You're a dad. There ain't no off season, brother.
you are absolutely. I work harder now than I ever did in my career. So, but just enjoying life, man.
Bro, that's so funny because I saw the picture that the Twins, their TV, and they put out. I was like, damn, they picked a good picture of you, boy. You looking good out there. The model.
6 years ago.
We'll take it, my friend. The one and only Denard Span. Denard, one love. Give my love to Annie and the kids, and we'll talk to you soon, man. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Take care.
All right, buddy. The one and only Denard Span, one of the greatest people I've ever met in my entire life. That is not hyperbole at all. Such a great insight from him being a player and his thoughts on the Dodgers and the Yankees. That is a good question. Has the Dodgers brand, is it bigger now than the Yankees brand? I don't know. Going to be good. All right, speaking of baseball, we're going to find out at 6 o'clock tonight who is going to be part of the 2025 National Baseball Hall of Fame class. The class of 2025 for the National Baseball Hall of Fame, joining Classic Era Committee electees Dick Allen and Dave Parker. We've got Bobby Abreu, Carlos Beltran, Mark Burley, Carlos Gonzalez, Curtis Granderson, Felix Hernandez, Torrey Hunter, Adam Jones, Andrew Jones, Ian Kinsler, Russell Martin, Brian McCann, Dustin Pedroia, Andy Pettit, Hanley, and Manny Ramirez, Fernando Rodney, A-Rod, K-Rod, Jimmy Rollins, CC Sabathia, Ichiro Suzuki, Troy Tulowitzki, Chase Utley, Omar Vizquel, Billy Wagner, David Wright, and Ben Zobrist. I am going to give you my ballot now. These are the 4 guys that I think should be part of that class. And I'm going to go in name order. And number 1 is I'm going to go with Karsten Charles Sabathia. I look at what CC was able to do in his career. It's going to be so difficult for guys to have 300 wins now in their career. You're just not going to see it as much. But when you look at what he was able to do, a 251 and 161 record, pitching for the Indians, the Brewers, and the Yankees. He was a 6-time All-Star. He was the ace on the Yankees World Series team in 2009. He won the ALCS MVP that year. He was the wins leader in 2009, 2010. He won the Cy Young in 2007. He was a guy that was an absolute leader for his teams. And you remember that midseason trade from the Indians to the Brewers where he pitched on 3 days rest, and he was fantastic for them down the stretch. I can't say enough good things about CC Sabathia, and I think during his time, he was one of the best pitchers in the game. So I think for me, I got CC Sabathia making it this year. And again, we're going in name order. I'm not going into who I think is better. Just as far as order of the ballot, I got CC Sabathia at number 1. Number 2, I think this guy should be a unanimous selection. I don't think there is any argument against it, and that's Ichiro Suzuki. He had a full career in Japan pretty much before he even came here. I mean, he had 1,200 hits in Japan. If you combine his hits in Japan and in the U.S., he has over 4,200 hits. But we'll just go with his statistics in Major League Baseball. He was a .311 hitter. He had 3,089 hits in that historic club, one of the best one of the best leadoff hitters of all time. He was a 10-time All-Star in the major leagues. We're just focusing on his time here in the U.S. He won the MVP and Rookie of the Year in 2001 in his first year. This guy changed his entire life and came here and was the best player in baseball. He was a 10-time Gold Glover, 3-time Silver Slugger, 2-time batting champion, AL stolen base leader. He has the MLB record for most hits in the season, breaking George Sisler's record 262 hits in one season. No doubt, first ballot Hall of Famer, as no doubt as they come. I really, really hope they don't overthink that. And we saw that and it's still crazy to me that the only person in history that is a no doubt unanimous selection was Mariano Rivera. Somebody left Derek Jeter off. 3 people left Ken Griffey Jr. off. Like, what are we doing? And do I believe that he'll be unanimous? Probably not, because I think somebody will have a bug up their ass and say, it doesn't matter that he had 3,000 hits. It should. It should. This guy's a 10-time All-Star. Again, he was the Rookie of the Year. His first year, I don't care if he was a grown-ass man or not. You could say he shouldn't have been the Rookie of the Year because he wasn't young and he was already a professional. Fine. But he still won the MVP that year. So he was the best player in the American League. He was the best player in baseball. He was the most entertaining guy to watch. He turned routine ground balls to shortstop into must-see television. You want to talk about things that baseball needs? They need more guys like Ichiro. Number 3, I think that this guy should get in, and that's Omar Vizquel. Now, it's not so much offensively. 272 career hitter, 2,800 hits. Played for, 6 different teams in his career. 3-time All-Star, but he's an 11-time Gold Glove Award winner. In my opinion, the second greatest defender at the position in history, behind Ozzie Smith. I think Ozzie's number 1. I think he is a guy that was just so flawless picking it at shortstop. And that combination with him and Roberto Alomar when they were together with Cleveland, the best double play combination I've ever seen in my entire life. Both switch hitters. He got on base. He was a menace on the base pass. You had Roberto Alomar, who's one of the more underrated players, I think, in baseball history, and defensively, second to none. So I know when you're looking at statistics, a lot of it when it comes to the Hall of Fame, people look at the offensive side. I look for this guy defensively. And when you look at one of the best of all time, it's hard, very hard to keep a guy like Omar Vizquel out. And my final guy, number 4 on my ballot, it is a guy that I've been kind of saying should be in for a while now, and that's Billy Wagner. One of the best closers in the history of the game, still top 10 in saves, 422 of them. 7-time All-Star, the Roll-Age Relief Man Award, 1999. I know he was part of a no-hitter back in 2003, but this is a guy that used to get up, take a baseball out in the field, throw the ball as far as humanly possible to build up that arm strength. Not a big guy, right? He was only 5'11", not a big dude at all, 5'10", excuse me. But this dude is his 11.9 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched, the second highest of any major league pitcher with at least 800 innings pitched. He was a force for many, many years. Astros, Phillies, Mets, Red Sox, Braves. I think Billy Wagner, one of the best closers of all time, he should get in as well. So there's my ballot. We'll find out at 6 o'clock today. The great Mark Topkin is going to join us at 1 p.m. tomorrow to break that down. We'll have Rob Motti joining us at 12:30 from the AP NFL writer, and then at 1:30 Eric Erlinson for his weekly hit as well. Let's finish up with some Raw highlights from last night. Jey Uso and Gunther in the ring, jousting verbally. Gunther messes up again, and he's saying something about like words and actions, and they don't line up and all this, and it's just like I'm losing steam with Gunther. My whole thing when I'm talking about some of these pro wrestlers, these WWE superstars, I kind of see it before it happens sometimes. I saw it with MJF. I'm seeing it with Gunther, where their act gets stale, and it's just the same thing over and over and over again. And they're not finding new ways to reinvent themselves. And that's what I'm seeing with Gunther. Like right now, he's not a guy, like people respect his in-ring work. They love what he does, but I don't watch Gunther as like, oh, I hate that guy. He's a heel. Or I love that guy. He's a babyface. He's not evoking any emotion. That's what you need in professional wrestling. You need to be you have to have your flame inside stoked because you hate the guy, you love the guy, the storyline's compelling, and I just don't see that with Gunther. Why? Is this in a career achievement award? That's why he's the champ? Put the belt on Jay. Put the belt on somebody else. It's just look at the next storyline we're going to talk about, the New Day, right? The New Day's backstage with JBL. They're saying, if anybody knows what we're going through, it's you, and that doesn't go well. And Kofi puts $2 in JBL's pocket. Later on, when they go out to the ring, he takes the money back. Like, that's good storytelling. Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston kick Big E out of the New Day. They are getting booed incessantly every single week. Kofi loses to Rey Mysterio this week, but they get, some action against the LWO guys. That's what you want. You want every single storyline to make you feel something. And I like where the New Day is at right now. I'm curious to see where that storyline is headed. Penta, again, looked fantastic in the ring. I thought it was a great match with Pete Dunne after what we saw last week against Chad Gable. He's trying to get some revenge. He goes to Dominic Mysterio. I need help with luchadors. Who can you send me to? He gives him a piece of paper. That's intrigue. That's storyline. It doesn't always have to happen in the ring. I love that kind of stuff. Also, Sami Zayn comes out. Lets everybody know he's declaring for the Royal Rumble. Here comes Kevin Owens. I know you've always had my back. Almost guilting him. You're always going to have my back. You're always going to have my back. And we know Sami's a babyface. Kevin Owens is a heel, but they're best friends in real life. It's kind of an interesting back and forth. And we know that ties in with Sami taking the advice from Seth Rollins last week. And, hey, I got to focus on myself. I got to make sure that I'm putting myself in a position to be world champion. And then at the end of the night, when Drew McIntyre is about to hit Seth Rollins with the Claymore kick with his head right up against the ring post there, here comes Sami Zayn. And how does the night end? With Sami Zayn erroneously haluva kicking Seth Rollins in his head in the corner inside the ring. Great storyline. Great storytelling. There's so many good things, and we know the build to WrestleMania, the build to Royal Rumble, this time of the year is the best for wrestling. We're getting closer to the Royal Rumble. There's so many big names in the Rumble. We heard CM Punk declare, Roman Reigns, John Cena, Sami Zayn, Drew McIntyre. It's just going to be nuts. I cannot wait for the Royal Rumble. It is always my favorite pay-per-view. I was so lucky to be there in attendance at the Trop last year. We saw CM Punk give an interview to Jackie Redmond up in the stands there at the arena. And he's talking, and he was talking smack about Hulk Hogan and John Cena and all these other things. And all I kept thinking about is, where's John Cena? All this talk about the John Cena retirement tour, we're going to see him all the time. Like, how come he's not on Raw? How come he's not on SmackDown? I thought he was committed for the entire year. And now we're almost in February, and we saw him on the debut episode of Raw on Netflix, and we haven't seen him since. It's just weird. Like, I thought Cena was going to be like a full-time guy, and we haven't seen him. That's got to change. Women's match, you got Bayley setting up something with Roxanne Perez, which I think could be good. She probably needs to take that next step and leave NXT and come up to the big show now. And also you see the women's match with the True Fusion Collective against Damage Control. Again, I don't see the whole thing with Sonya Deville and with who else? With what's her name? I can't think of her name right now. Holy smokes. So Shayna Baszler, all right, and Zoe Stark. Like, again, where's the emotion? There's some good stuff there where you're looking at it and going, all right, the in-ring stuff is good. We know how good in the ring Dakota Kai and Io Sky are, but it was just a retread of the same old shit over and over again. And we need to see new things. We need to see fresh things. We need to see things that evoke our emotion, and you're just not getting it from them right there. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me today on the program. A big thank you to everybody that joined us today, including Denard Span and Gabby Shirley. And shout out to Chris Russell. I know he couldn't make it today. Unfortunately, we lost Pete Medhurst, longtime play-by-play guy for Navy. And Chris, it was his partner. And, man, our thoughts and our prayers. Please, if you can go follow my guy Chris on social media, send him a message. Let him know that we're thinking about him. Thoughts and prayers to everybody up there in the D.C. area for losing such a great guy that we were very fortunate to be able to meet a couple of years ago. Just a sad, sad day there. Tomorrow, again, I'll say it again, Rob Motti is going to join us at 12:30 from the AP. What does he think about the NFL Conference Championship games? Mark Topkin joins us at 1 o'clock to talk about the new Baseball Hall of Fame class That is going to be announced at 6 o'clock today. And then Eric Erlinson, lightninginsider.com, joins us at 1:30 for his weekly visit. The Bolts back in action tonight against the Canadians up in Montreal. That puck drop will be at 7 o'clock. Follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere at Recher. Please, please, please like and subscribe. Let's get those subscriptions up to 1,000 by the time 10 days roll around. Thank you again. Appreciate you all. We'll see you tomorrow at noon right here on the Recher Podcast.